Callum Chase, the author of the book, The Economic Singularity, Artificial Intelligence and the Death of Capitalism. And you heard just prior to the bottom of the hour, Callum described to us why he feels like we could be facing the abandonment of capitalism when we get to the point where the robots essentially force us all out of work. And, you know, Callum, it's an interesting thing to look at because we've had technological revolutions before. We've had economic revolutions before. So one of the things that you outline in the Economic Singularity is the idea of replacing the model that we have now, where you work for a living, that your value or your economic health is tied to your job, to a system that is dependent on what you describe as a UBI, or a universal basic income. Describe what that is and what it means.
So a universal basic income is an income paid to every citizen that they get not for doing anything, not for doing a job, but just as of right because they are a citizen. And obviously, in the first instance, it would be paid for by taxation. Now, actually, the debate is being led by America because, you know, obviously America, Silicon Valley in particular, is leading the whole introduction and progress of artificial intelligence, which is driving all of this. And the debate isn't actually terribly different in the States to the debate here in Europe. I mean, we have perhaps a more developed welfare state, but you also have one in the States. You know, if you fall out of a job in the States, you don't just immediately starve. There are welfare arrangements. And universal basic income is not something that we should be trying to introduce now, I believe. Some people on the left, some people in Bernie Sanders' camp, for instance, think it should be introduced now. I think that would be a mistake because any country which unilaterally on its own introduced UBI would hear a giant sucking sound as all the rich people left and all the poor people arrived.
Sure.
But at the time when sort of, you know, a quarter, a half of us can no longer work, we're going to need something like this. We're going to need to introduce a way for all of us to stay alive and keep the economy going.
Right. And if you're talking about something that could happen in the next 30 or 40 years, there's a lot of people who are listening to this program right now who still plan on being members of the workforce at that point. So let's talk a little bit about some of the drivers that are forcing people out of work at the moment. There has always been, I think since the Industrial Revolution, there have been people who have been, for lack of a better term, technologied out of a job. The technology has simply advanced to the point where nobody needed to do that anymore. So why are we accelerating that? Where are the drivers, and who is most at risk over the near term, over the next decade or so, of losing a job to a robot?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. Automation has made people unemployed for a long time. In the Industrial Revolution, you know, it happened to a lot of people. The automation then was basically mechanization. It was mostly replacing the muscle jobs that people did. And people were fine, although, you know, it was very uncomfortable for a lot of people a lot of the time. But in the long run, people were fine because they could go on and do jobs which used their brain power. But of course, that didn't work out so well for the horse. In 1900, about 40% of Americans worked on farms, and now it's down to about 1%. But the humans have all gone to do jobs which require more mental abilities. There were 25 million horses working on farms, and now there are none. And those horses haven't gone on to work anywhere else. There just aren't replacements for those horses. So 1900 was kind of peak horse. And what we may be looking at now is peak human in the workplace in the next few decades. And the reason for it is artificial intelligence. AI is at the root of all of this. The machines are now, they are now better than us at image recognition. They are catching us up fast in speech recognition, and they're making good headway on us in natural language understanding. Those are the skills that most of us use at work. And when computers overtake us in all of those skills, it won't be long before they will do our jobs faster, better, and cheaper than we can. And whenever a machine can do your job, it will do your job, because machines don't get cranky, and they don't get tired, and they don't get drunk, and they don't get cross with each other. And they are amenable to improvement. You can improve them, and they are improving at an exponential rate. So it's extremely likely, I believe, that within a few decades, almost everybody's going to be unemployed. Now, I should say that this is a minority view at the moment. Most people who think about these things think that it's the Luddite fallacy. We've had automation before. It didn't cause widespread unemployment. It's just going to be the same again. But I don't think that they're taking sufficiently into account the astonishing progress of AI and what it can do now, and what it's going to be able to do soon. And you ask about who are the people who are most vulnerable in the next few years. I think the first really big category of job which is going to go, and you can see it coming soon, is drivers. Because we've got self-driving vehicles almost here now. They're going to be fully automated self-driving cars and trucks within a few years, and it'll be a few years after that the installed base will have churned, and there'll be quite a lot of cars and trucks which don't need a driver. And that'll be a good thing, because we won't kill each other with cars, which we do a lot. We kill 1.2 million people a year in the roads at the moment. But it does mean that those drivers are going to have to find a new job. And it's not immediately obvious what that's going to be.
Right. And again, Callum Chase is here with us. The Economic Singularity is the book, The Artificial Intelligence and the Death of Capitalism. And the way that intelligence is processed is something else that you discuss in the book. And this fascinated me because a lot of us have always sort of relied on that idea that machines and computers are great aggregators of information. They're much better than us at doing a bunch of different calculations very, very quickly. But machines don't have ideas. Machines don't come up with ideas organically. Or do they? How close are we getting to a machine that can just invent something on its own?
We're already there. There's a very good video which you can see on YouTube if you Google DeepMind Atari. A company called DeepMind, which is an AI research outfit in London, bought by Google a couple of years ago, created a machine which taught itself how to play Atari video games. Atari are old video games like Star Wars and Pong and Breakout. And there's this brilliant video of this machine teaching itself how to play Breakout. When it first starts, it's completely hopeless. It misses every missile. But after 24 hours, it creates a new strategy for winning that game, which almost no humans have ever invented, and certainly the people who were training the system didn't even know about. And so machines already can learn, and they can create.
And that programming, that section of your book where you talk about DeepMind, it also grabbed my attention because instead of teaching a computer what to think or to think, we're teaching it how to think, and that seems to be the tipping point. So, what are the doors that could conceivably be opened by that when it comes to something as simple as plowing a field, something as simple as running a fast food restaurant? What are the applications for that? Are they conceivably unlimited?
They really are. I mean, artificial intelligence is going to improve our quality of life enormously. It's going to diagnose diseases much better than we can at the moment. It's going to drive tractors down rows of crops, and the tractor is going to look at each plant as it goes along, and it's going to say, are you a cabbage? Because I don't think you're a cabbage. I think you're a weed. If you can prove to me within the next 2 nanoseconds that you're a cabbage, I won't exterminate you. Nope, sorry, you failed, you're dead, you're gone. And everything that we do will be enhanced by AI. The Internet of Things, where the world is full of sensors and full of little processors and reports to us continuously on its state of, on its situation. So when a bridge is about to fail, instead of just failing and killing people, it tells us it's going to happen and we can stop it. It's hard to get to an end of all the fabulous possibilities. But one of the reasons why I wrote the book is that I don't think we're going to get that world, that very exciting world, just without trying. I think we're going to have to do some planning, and I think we're going to have to manage things so that we don't get some of the bad outcomes.
Well, and you lay out the possibility that you will end up with a system of oligarchs that will simply be on an island somewhere while the rest of us just remain completely useless. It doesn't necessarily have to be that way, but it does raise the question, if we're out of the workforce, if we're unemployable and not working, what are we going to be doing?
Well, actually, I don't think that's too much of a problem. I think humans will find interesting, fun things to do without having to go to work. And for most people, I mean, John, you've got a job which I'm sure you really love. It's a great job. A lot of people would love to do what you do.
It's not bad.
Yeah. So good for you. But there's an awful lot of people who don't really enjoy their work and would love to be doing something else. And there are groups of people who, for a long time, haven't worked and have not had a problem with it. I'm sure you know lots of retired people who say that they're really busy, they have no idea how they manage to fit a job in, and having lots of fun. And also aristocrats. In Europe for centuries, aristocrats didn't work. And they didn't all fall into despair because they had nothing to do. They lived perfectly happy lives, and a lot of them were responsible for the sort of the great intellectual achievements of Western civilization. So I don't think that finding things to do is going to be a problem for people. I think the problems are going to be, how do we switch to universal basic income? That's a tricky transition to make. Mm-hmm. And then, as you said, the world where you possibly have a very small number of people who own the AI, and because they own the AI, they own everything else, because that's where all the value is created. And then they have privileged access to an incredible flow of technological improvements which enhance their physical and cognitive abilities. And technology is progressing fast now. We haven't seen anything yet. It's going to get faster and faster and faster. The progress is going to be faster. And whether they like it or not, this group of privileged people will become a separate species. And I think that's dangerous. I think we have to work out how to avoid that scenario, which I call the gods and the useless scenario. But I think these problems can be solved. I think we can work out how to make sure we get the good outcomes, not the bad one.
Callum Chase is here with us. The Economic Singularity, Artificial Intelligence and the Death of Capitalism is the book. So in a situation like that, where we have people who are enjoying leisure time and making themselves productive in one way or another, but not involved in the workforce, we have tied through capitalism our value and our wealth so much to our jobs. How do you make that shift? I mean, if someone is going to switch to universal basic income, from where does the wealth derive?
Yeah, well, if we manage the process well, we will get what people call an economy of radical abundance. Machines make economic processes more efficient. That's why we use them. That's why they do replace humans in jobs. And so when you have machines which are not conscious and not smarter than us, but very smart in very specific ways, they will be very, very efficient. And the manufacture of houses, clothes, vehicles, and production of entertainments and all the services we need, these things will get very, very cheap. So a combination of very cheap goods and services and universal basic income, which will mean that everybody around the world will be able to afford a really good life, a good, say, US middle-class standard of living, which is what most people around the world aspire to. The problem is, as I say, that you may have a small number of people who have much more than that and who become a separate and therefore probably dominant species. So that's the dangerous thing. But actually, a world where nobody has to go and be a dustbin man, or nobody has to go and work in a boring factory job, that's got to be a good thing.
Yeah, you would think. Well, Callum Chase, hang on for us for just a second. We'll do some more talking. And again, Callum Chase is our guest, and the book is Artificial Intelligence and the Death of Capitalism. The title is The Economic Singularity, Artificial Intelligence and the Death of Capitalism, and we'll talk a little bit more about it just ahead, and what it is that happens to humanity, not just economically, but physically, as a result of the approach of this economic singularity. We'll get to all of that just ahead. We've got some more information for you up online at facebook.com/OA Radio Show. And there is plenty more on the way. Stick with us as Overnight America continues.